There are a lot of people who contribute to these quarterly financial updates, and I want to thank them all for the diligence and thoughtful work they do. It isn't easy, especially as global instability and unpredictability persist. A range of factors, from global conflict to the risks of growing trade protectionism to consumer price inflation, all affect Ontario's economic outlook. We're also keeping an eye on the unemployment rate. And while the Bank of Canada has finally started cutting interest rates, people around the province are still feeling stretched in these uncertain times and making tough choices for themselves and their families. That is why we will continue to put more money back into people's pockets. Today's first quarter finances are a step in the right direction. Now, while Ontario is not immune to any potential economic slowdown, our economy is proving resilient, and I don't take that for granted. I'm pleased to report that Ontario's real GDP grew by 0.7% in the first quarter, supported by higher exports and household spending. That's good news, and it reflects stronger than expected results for our first quarter. Our government has made huge gains, drumming up domestic and international investor confidence, including Ontario startups. Companies are putting down roots in the province and creating good-paying jobs for people and families. Confidence in Ontario's financial position goes further. Many of you know Ontario has a AA credit rating with 3 of the Big 4 credit rating agencies. A clear sign of confidence in Ontario came in June, when Morningstar DBRS upgraded Ontario's credit rating. This is the first credit rating upgrade since 2006. In practical terms, it adds to Ontario's story as a stable, reliable place to invest. Today's first quarter finances show Ontario is hitting the mark with its financial projections. Overall, Ontario is in an enviable position and our finances are in excellent shape. Our projections for revenues, program spending, and borrowing, cost of borrowing, are all on track with the forecast from the 2024 budget. The first quarter finances projects a deficit of $9.8 billion in 24-25, also unchanged from the 2024 budget. Of course, the world did not stand still for the last 3 months. Ontario announced that work is moving ahead on Highway 413 with shovels in the ground to build the roads and highways our growing population needs. We welcome significant new investments like from Honda, Asahi Kasei, and Sanofi that come with good-paying jobs. We created over 160,000 jobs over the first 7 months of 2024. We signed an agreement with the state of Illinois to boost two-way trade and investment as part of our $500 billion annual trade partnership with the United States. And just in time for summer, we increased choice and convenience for Ontario consumers by allowing currently licensed grocery stores to sell ready-to-drink alcoholic beverages. As you hear me say, I will continue to be transparent with the people of Ontario about the state of the province's finances. We provide updates at least every 90 days. And in the next few months, we'll be busy as we continue to provide updates on the province's economic and fiscal performance. For example, at some point over the next 45 days, we will release the audited statements for the 23-24 fiscal year through the public accounts. And then on or before November 15th, I'll be back before you to release our progress update on the 24-25 fiscal and economic outlook with the fall economic statement. Our track record speaks for itself. Across the board, our government is making life more affordable and convenient for people and families while getting shovels in the ground to build for the future. Sur tous les plans, notre gouvernement rend plus simple et plus abordable la vie des citoyens et de leurs familles, tout en mettant la main à la pâte pour bâtir l'avenir. By prudently planning for today and tomorrow, we will continue supporting families, workers, and businesses. Thank you, and I would be happy to take any questions.
We'll now open the floor for questions. Please state your name and outlet, and as a reminder, one question, one follow-up.
Minister, have you or any of your current or former staff been interviewed by the RCMP as potential witnesses in the Greenbelt land swap debacle?
No.
So you have, are you prepared to sit down with them if they...
Well, we're an open book, and as the Premier said, nothing to hide, and they got to do their job, and do your job, and we're going to continue to execute against the province's plan, but no, I have not been contacted.
Does that weigh heavily as you look toward an early election call next year? I know you're preparing a pre-election budget now. Does the fact that the RCMP is investigating or interviewing current and former Conservative staffers to talk about this let's wait till June 2026?
The way I think about it, I think about, we went to the people in 2022. We ran on my budget, as you recall, in 2022, and we're executing against that plan. That's very much focused on growing our economy and building the infrastructure, many of the things that I highlighted here, and of course, supporting our workers. You know, the previous government, I like to say, built virtually nothing. You know, we've got to build. We've got people coming to this province. That's what I'm focused on, putting more money in people's pockets. We haven't raised taxes or raised fees. In fact, just the opposite. We're cutting taxes, we're cutting fees. That's the way you get to economic prosperity. We want people to thrive and succeed here in the province. That's what I'm focused on.
Minister, could you explain, though, the Premier and your party described the Wynne government as having bankrupted the province. But here you are adding more debt every year than they did. So who's bankrupting and why? Things are great now, things were bankrupt then. Explain.
Well, let's look at 2009. DBRS, a firm which I ran at the time, downgraded Ontario's credit rating, both the short-term and the long-term rating. 15 years, 15, that was after the financial crisis. Jeff, that was after the financial crisis, and they had a 7-year path to balance, if you recall. 7 years. You know, we're going to be balancing in a couple of years. We got a credit upgrade from that same DBRS 15 years later. We're on positive watch with Moody's and S&P. You know, that means lower borrowing costs. That means lower interest costs. So, you know, I believe that you can be fiscally prudent and put the province's finances back on track. At the same time, you're growing the economy and prosperity and the infrastructure in Ontario and supporting workers and families.
Minister, the AMO conference is next week. They're looking for a number of things from the province. Again, they're asking for a conversation about who pays for what, looking for more support for homelessness. What are you prepared to offer them?
Well, I'm sure you'll stick around for AMO next week, and we're very much looking forward to it. Like, let me tell you what we have done. We've sat down with municipalities, 444. I've sat down with many of them, our Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, all our cabinet, our caucus colleagues. We continue to meet, and of course the Premier is leading the charge because we believe in engaging and having constructive conversations. And we'll continue to do that with, through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and other fora. But let me tell you this, over the last 5 years, I've increased the funding for municipalities by 45%, some $10 billion. That's close to 10% a year. Is there more work to do? Absolutely. You know, but we're going to do it together, and we've done a lot together. We've invested, we've provided in my last budget significant funding for sewage and water. In fact, just last week the Premier announced the successful applicants of that first round, and we quadrupled the funding for sewage and water infrastructure in municipalities so they could build more homes. You know, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes working together over a long period of time, and we're going to tackle these challenges together.
On homelessness in particular, they're asking for you to let people who are homeless qualify under the PSP for the shelter allowance as a way to help them and address the encampments issue. Is that something you're willing to consider?
You know what, we've worked with them, we'll continue to work with them, but let me point out some things, like the homelessness prevention program. A year ago, I increased that budget by 40%. 40%, that's significant, that's $200 million more, $700 million in total, permanent increase every year. So we're providing that funding. You know, we've worked very closely on a range of projects. Obviously, Toronto received a lot of the asylum and refugees people, and so we help support them. We're supporting municipalities. We're going to continue to work with them, and that work doesn't stop.
Minister, notwithstanding your support of the municipalities, what do you think of their position that some of these expenses for mental health, homelessness, opioid addictions, etc., are inappropriate for the property tax base? Do you agree with that position?
So what do I agree with is that we increased the funding for mental health and addiction. I increased it up to $525 million a year. That's over a 10-year period. That's $3.8 billion. You know, is there more to do? Absolutely. I'm not going to get into the specifics of every program, but what I'll tell you this is that this finance minister, this government is very acutely aware of the challenges in our communities, and that's why when AMO last year said their #1 priority was mental health and addiction and homelessness, that's why we delivered the increase in mental health and addiction support. That's why we increased that homelessness prevention program. I'm not just mentioning, you know, a couple of programs. There's multiple programs that we continue to work together on.
But the municipalities say that all of that funding is piecemeal. While they're thankful for it, they say it's also piecemeal and they're looking for some kind of a coordinated strategy with multiple levels of government to kind of address what they feel might need a new deal, essentially, for municipalities.
We have a very constructive relationship with, for example, the big city mayors, Marion Mead Ward and her predecessors. We continue to have a dialogue, and we work very well together.
No new deal.
No, we've had a lot of deals. We've had a lot of deals, and I'll tell you this, every year, you're going to ask the same question a year from now, because you never stop. You have to keep going, and you have to figure out, okay, where are the shared priorities? How can you work together? And by the way, I would add the federal government to that equation, because a lot of the funding that we're providing, for example, with Toronto, with Ottawa, with other jurisdictions, municipalities within Ontario, we need the feds to be a partner as more people come to this country, which is a good thing. But we have to have the supports in place. And that's, again, why I think it's so important. You got to build the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the subways. That doesn't happen overnight. We're going to continue building.
Minister, on the Ontario Place parking lot, the Premier has suggested that the expense was too much to bear. Can you tell us how much that parking lot was going to cost, and how much would it cost to build across the street?
Well, I'll leave that to the Minister of Infrastructure, who's working on those plans, and I think it's premature to speculate on the costs. But you know what we are going to do? We're going to bring Ontario Place back to life. You know, not everyone may agree with this, that, or the other thing, but what I think a lot of Ontarians agree with is do something. And I think our plan is a very robust plan. It's been kind of dormant for 10, 12 years, you know, at an Ontario Place. It was shut down. You know, we've got a very robust plan to bring a water park, to bring public spaces, to bring music, to bring the Science Center all in one space. And I tell you this, I think it's going to be one of the biggest world-class destinations for people to come from all over the world.
Minister, 7-Eleven tells me they're going to allow customers to drink inside their convenience stores in just a few months' time at the beginning of the new year. They have the necessary liquor licenses. Does that give you any pause? Some of these locations are attached to gas stations and what have you. Does that worry you, Minister?
Well, let me say this first off, that you have to apply for these licenses, and that's up to the convenience stores, the 7-Elevens, and the grocery stores. So that we have a very robust process through the Alcohol Gaming Commission and Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario to be able to process those licenses, make sure the standards are there, they're met. We've hired more people to do that. So I believe in small businesses. I believe that they're doing what they want, they think their customers want, and they're doing it responsibly. So the other thing I would say, Richard, is that already today you can buy at a gas station. In Uxbridge, in Goodwood, in my riding, you pull up to the Esso station there. It's a great little convenient gas station, and you can buy not only beer and wine, you can buy all forms of liquor there. It's small, but it's convenient for people. So people are already doing that, and we're going to continue to support our small
It
businesses.
doesn't worry you that someone's going to fill up their tank and they go in and buy alcohol and maybe drink it in the store. That doesn't worry you, Minister?
Look, we've got we've got a very robust policies in place for strict fines and penalties, and we've increased the penalties for impaired driving. Safety comes first. We take social responsibility extremely seriously. We put more money in to support those organizations that get public awareness out there about being responsible. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna support Ontarians, treat them like adults, and the good actors and all the good businesses who are trying to do the right thing for their consumers and their customers.
Taxpayers Association on the front line of Queen's Park yesterday calling on you to make the gas tax cut permanent. You've extended it 3 times. Will you make it permanent, sir?
I'm not going to speculate on tax policy here, but I love the fact that they highlight that we're cutting gas taxes, we're cutting taxes, and the folks down the 401 in Ottawa, they've been increasing taxes. So, we just didn't cut the gas tax. We've cut small business tax. We've reduced the fees for license plate stickers. We've taken tolls off of roads. We've lowered the personal income tax through tax rebates for people making up to $50,000. This is a government that believes that you can't tax your way to economic prosperity. You put the conditions in place for economic growth, and where possible, lower taxes for businesses and for people, lower fees, and I think there's no question in my mind that our plan is working.
Minister, are you going to provide legal counsel for any current staffers who sit down with the RCMP to discuss the Greenbelt scandal?
That's something that's going to be left to the Premier's office, so I'm not going to comment on that. But again, what I said earlier stands, that we're very focused as a government on executing our transparent plan for the people of Ontario, investing in, look, the infrastructure. You know, you can't just build a highway overnight. You can't build a hospital overnight. We made a great announcement in Durham 2 weeks ago to create not only a new hospital, but also, in my riding, in Pickering, a post-acute rehabilitation center, which is going to help a community, Durham region, which is growing at 7% population growth. We got to think down the road a little bit. Build those roads, but also build the healthcare, build the schools, build the facilities to accommodate a growing population, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay, this will be the last question.
Back to the homelessness issue, you mentioned multiple times this prevention program, but the numbers that the Trillium has from your government say, you know, there are almost 250,000 people who are homeless in this province. It's growing. Will there be more money to try and do more prevention?
What I can tell you for sure is I'm leaving on Sunday for the association meeting with municipalities. My team has some 35 meetings scheduled over 2 days. You know, we're going to continue to have robust conversations and talk about the shared priorities that we have. And of course, homelessness, mental health and addiction, building more homes, building infrastructure. There's a range of priorities that the 444 municipalities right across Ontario have. One thing I know in business and in government as well, if you're not talking, you're not coming up with the best solution. So we're going to have very good discussions. I can count on that. You can count on that over the next couple of days.
Minister, on green bonds, have you issued any of these with the nuclear, under the new nuclear rules, and has that been a success or not?
Great question. I don't believe we've issued any specifically for nuclear projects, but you're raising a really good point that we now have the ability to do that. That's being received very well around the world. As you know, we're the largest green bond issuer in Canada. In fact, we're more than all the provinces and the federal government combined. And, you know, it's a win-win because we not only get to fund green projects and support our climate change plan and our green economy, but our borrowing costs are lower. When you issue green bonds, you get better pricing for the people of Ontario. So I see that as a win-win. And there'll be a day when we issue, under this new framework, bonds that contain nuclear projects.
You know when that will be?
I have no idea, because the markets are going to drive that, not me.
Are you concerned that there's any kind of contraction on the horizon, any kind of slowdown for the economy? You've been saying that for quite a bit now, but it hasn't really materialized, so what gives?
You know, it's a very fair point that, you know, the economy is something a finance minister worries about all the time. The good news is, as I mentioned in our highlights, that the first quarter, calendar quarter, grew by 0.7. It's positive. We've had 160,000 new jobs this year. That's very positive. You know, interest rates are starting to come down. Inflation is coming down. But let's be frank, the risks are still out there. People are still finding rent and food and affordability still a challenge in many parts of our province. So there's a lot more work to do. Of course, I hope that our economy will succeed, but we're also making sure that we're making the investments that allows the conditions for economic growth. And so far, we've done pretty well, and I really expect that to continue.
Okay, that would be the last question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.